Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and finance. This week, the pivot to Asia. Just how important is it to the United States and to the regional powerhouse China? And does the rest of Asia need to pick a side? And New York's Tribeca comes to Doha for the annual film festival. As Qatar tries to establish a movie business in the desert, we speak to the CEO of the Doha Film Institute. You might have heard this phrase a bit recently because it's almost become a branding exercise, really. The pivot to Asia. It's basically the United States' effort to refocus its military, trade and economic ties with a part of the world that is actually still growing. But as ever, it's not as simple as that, because Barack Obama's been touring Southeast Asian nations, trying to persuade them to join a trade-free agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The catch is, though, it excludes China. See, there's a bit of competition for Southeast Asia's money. US trade with ASEAN totaled $178 billion in 2010. Chinese trade with the region hit almost $300 billion in 2011. But both sides have ambitions to push trade past $500 billion by the year 2015. So here's how we're going to do it this week. We've got correspondent Wayne Hay looking at how the superpowers are courting the ASEAN nations. But we also want to look at how the region's already been courted. Divyas is going to look at Hong Kong, perhaps the first place in Asia to really feel the Western invasion, if I can call it that. And we'll expand on that with the global chairman of the financial group KPMG, who's based in Hong Kong. So let's start now with Divyas' report, a case study of a New York restaurateur who's got to the point of opening several eateries right across the region.
The food here comes as close as you can get to Italian-American in New York. The recipes used are passed down from generations of Sicilians who at the turn of the last century left a stagnant economy in Italy to take advantage of growth across the Atlantic.
All my grandparents came to the United States because that was the land of opportunity, and that was where they knew that their craft would be more appreciated than it was in Sicily. I feel the exact same way. I feel like I made that move, but I just went east.
The walls of the restaurant are covered with photos of co-founder Robert Spina's grandfather at his first restaurant in Brooklyn. Though their destinations are thousands of miles apart, it's not hard to see the parallels of their journey.
I was working with my family in food and beverage, but things in New York at the time were not very good. The economy was down. There were restaurants closing all over the place. So when Todd, my partner, and I decided to do this business, we really divided. We looked at which was the best place for us to do it, Hong Kong or New York.
The restaurant is in Hong Kong's popular Soho area, where new eateries and bars are popping up almost by the day. Since the financial crisis of 2008, Robert's story has become more common, according to Invest Hong Kong, a government body responsible for attracting businesses.
We're seeing a growing number of small and medium-sized enterprises and even owner-entrepreneurs voting with their feet, leaving Europe, leaving North America, coming to Asia, but using Hong Kong as their starting point when they first come here. And these are often fairly young entrepreneurs that are starting new businesses, consultancies, restaurants, design firms, and using Hong Kong as their entry point.
For the past 18 years, Hong Kong has been given the title of the world's freest economy by the Heritage Foundation. With its low taxes and light regulation, it also ranks second in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business survey.
One of the biggest advantages of Hong Kong is its convenience. Even when it comes to starting a company, all you need is 13 cents minimum capital, one director who doesn't have to be a Hong Kong resident, and you can register a company online in under an hour.
But Hong Kong runs the risk of being a victim of its own success. Many businesses are struggling to keep up with rising property prices. In the first quarter of 2012, commercial rent went up by nearly 20% from a year ago, and it could determine a company's survival.
There's probably not enough supply for Hong Kong's existing tenants, a little less the growth that we foresee throughout the course of the decade. So really one of Hong Kong's issues is being able to provide more space to take advantage of these tenants that want to come to Hong Kong.
Robert Spinner and his business partner have opened 2 more restaurants since Posto Publico, and they're planning to launch another 2 early next year.
I never thought in my wildest dreams that at 33 years old, I would be here in Hong Kong with my best friend and have a business here. It just happened to work out that way, and that's the way of the world.
Divyas Gopalan for Counting the Cost in Hong Kong.
Bangkok's Chinatown is larger than most. Thailand has one of the largest Chinese populations living outside China. At least 9 million people claim Chinese heritage. Among them, Chelita, who makes her living on the side of the road using an ancient Chinese technique to remove unwanted body hair from passing clients. Despite a push by the United States for an improved economic relationship with Thailand, she feels China is a better fit.
I feel that Thailand should have a closer relationship with China because the USA is too far away from Thailand. China, on the other hand, is like a brother or sister to Thailand.
China is Thailand's second largest trading partner behind Japan. Last year, trade between the 2 countries was worth more than $60 billion. Beijing wants that to increase to $100 billion in the next 2 years. But the United States also wants trade to increase as part of its so-called pivot to Asia. The Thais have agreed to enter talks to develop more business with the United States through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade pact between several countries, but not China. Thailand, it seems, wants to be as close as possible to both superpowers, hoping to cash in on their desire to do business with a region that continues to evolve.
Like China, like USA, like Japan, or any other country coming to Thailand, using Thailand at the gateway or at the springboard, connecting to those more opening up area, that will be quite beneficial to Thailand.
Thailand is known as the land of smiles, or at least that's what the tourism marketing people put out there. But when it comes to trade and investment, that's exactly what Thailand wants to be known for, as a country that is open to deals with anyone. And with the Chinese and Americans competing for influence in the region, this country is in a very good position. But business is only one part of the relationships, and Thailand will need to be careful when it comes to foreign policy and strategic interests.
Yeah, and maybe there's something to be learned from the past as well. This goes back to our earlier example of Hong Kong, which for a long time was the only go-to location for Western business. Michael Andrew is chairman of the accounting giant KPMG. He's based in Hong Kong, but he was here in Doha earlier in the week. He popped by for a bit of a chat about just which direction Asia is taking.
Well, I think it's a classic East meets West city, in the sense you have an Asian culture now sort of permeate the city, but you still have the vestiges of the colonial times of strong financial institutions, strong legal environment, strong corporate governance, and a real financial centre hub that's combining the best of both.
Is it still strong though? I don't know if you remember that phrase. I don't know if it's still used, but the acronym of FILTH, failed in London, try Hong Kong. People saying, you know, if you couldn't make it anywhere, you went to Hong Kong. Has it gotten rid of that? Is it still the big financial hub?
I think quite the reverse at the moment. I think basically it's becoming almost the centre point as the financial centre in the region, because Hong Kong has invested so heavily in China in recent years. You're now having a situation where most of the large funds managers, the international banks, are increasingly relocating their senior staff into Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is having quite a resurgence in financial markets.
Because you've got competition, you've got the Singapores of this world, obviously, you've got Shanghai. If you want to spread it further, you've got a place like Dubai becoming a big financial hub. Why Hong Kong?
Because I think Hong Kong is actually better balanced in all those aspects. I mean, when you look at the funds management capability and therefore the investment power, it's very much focused in Hong Kong. Why that, not Shanghai? I think Shanghai is still a little unsophisticated in having the corporate governance, the management talent and the systems that actually allow capital flows. In Singapore, is clearly a very important financial centre, but one that's much more focused on ASEAN than it is on the China-Indian axis. And then Dubai, again, very much focused on the Indian axis, but probably not as connected with the ASEAN region as it might be.
Well, let's talk about ASEAN, seeing as you've mentioned it. We know Barack Obama was visiting Southeast Asian nations recently, looking to tie up, military deals, economic deals, security, all these sorts of things. Whilst China is still courting those places as well, but China's got its own issues with the South China Sea disputes and all these sorts of things. Which way do the ASEAN countries go in your perspective?
Well, I think first of all the ASEAN countries think about ASEAN, and there's a lot of work to be done just in better integrating that market and introducing the free trade zone in 2015. In terms of economic ties, I don't think they really care. In fact, I think they want to have bilateral relationships with both the US and with China.
And they can do
what
that?
you're talking about is a defence and political relationship, which is a very different dimension.
Okay, well, let's stay with the business side of things and the economic side of things. They can do that? They can do this evenly and equally, do you think?
Oh, very much so. In fact, I think both the United States and China are very keen to link with Japan, Australia and Korea and really form an East Asian trade zone which can compete with the likes of the EU.
Won't those political and defence and security things I mentioned, though, potentially get in the way?
There's always a risk that politics interferes with business, and there will be situations clearly where there's tension, as you see at the moment, between China and the Philippines, China and Japan, in terms of territorial issues. But basically, if you have the right mechanism in place and business and trade occur, then there's more likely to be a better facilitated and diplomatic outcome on those situations.
Let's spread things out a bit further and just look at the economic climate in Asia. In relationship to Europe, first of all, given that the European economic crisis doesn't go away, Asia's exposure to that, what's been your experience of that and how is Asia coping and dealing with it?
Well, there's two types of economies, I think, Kamal. One, the trade-exposed economies have clearly been very impacted by the slowdown in Europe because they were the largest market for Asian goods. But then there's a second class of countries which increasingly focus on domestic consumption and trading interregionally. They're doing particularly well. If you look, for example, at countries like Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia, they've survived very, very well during the economic crisis. And Indonesia is an absolute standout.
And they've got enough to offer each other, even all being in such not a small region, but they're in the same region. They've got enough to offer each other, whereas...
Well, they have, but there's a second dimension to the point, Kamal, which is when I talk to most CEOs of global companies, they're now trying to allocate a larger part of their portfolio and grow businesses, and what they really believe is a region of the future. So they're attracting much more FDI, much more management skills, and much more capital is going into those nations.
Where would you say is the next potential hurdle, if I can put it that way? You know, if we're sort of getting used to this idea of just having an ongoing European crisis. It doesn't really go away. Any other things, potential trip-ups in the future to look out for?
I think there are two that worry me or trouble me. One is just the availability of funds, debt funds in particular, and the contraction of the banking system that's happened in Europe, and just how that feeds through into emerging countries. We're seeing quite a strategic withdrawal of a number of the European banks in that region, which means a lot of the SMEs in particular who want to grow just can't access funds. The second issue is currency, where I think you're seeing a bit of a race to the bottom at the moment of the major currencies. Everyone wants to devalue to make themselves more competitive, but in doing so, it's causing a great deal of volatility and turbulence in markets.
No, it's not something I'd heard about before. I mean, you hear about the issues with the yuan. You know, America's had a lot of problems with the Chinese currency, but this is happening elsewhere?
Well, I think you find the US dollar has significantly devalued over time as the money supply has expanded. Equally, I think the European Union will be very keen to get the euro to devalue, to bring back their competitiveness. And then you have situations like the Swiss franc being capped, the yen, which is clearly overvalued, which they want to take down. Everyone is trying to devalue their currency. The question is, who's on the other side of the transaction?
Okay, then let's, at this point, put your KPMG hat back on. I'd like to ask you about some accounting issues and financial issues and these sorts of things. Again, how many years we are now, 5, 6 years through this whole banking crisis, the crisis of confidence through the whole banking sector and the financial sector. Have things improved? Again, from where you stand at the head of one of the biggest financial services groups in the world?
Well, clearly things have improved, and a number of very important regulatory steps have been taken to basically improve transparency and governance, to improve the recapitalisation of banks, to look much more at how you price risk into transactions. And I think generally just the whole ethos of people doing business is much more cautious these days.
And people's faith in that? Because that's the key. And then, people who aren't involved in financial markets, tightly will just be looking at the whole trust issue and the fact that they lost a lot of trust in these sorts of...
And it's still a huge issue, I think, Kamal. The whole issue of business reputation is something that's very much in the minds of CEOs. You've had taxpayers had to bail out these institutions, yet they still read about scandals every 3 or 4 months, where clearly, whether it's been money laundering or whether it's been subverting trade sanctions or whether it's fiddling with the LIBOR rate, people generally get concerned as to why this is still going on.
I want to ask you about HP, but I know this is something which is ongoing at the moment, so you'll be limited. But viewers who may not be aware of what was going on, a story to do with HP, the company which makes printers and computers and the likes, talking about a huge accounting issue with a company that it acquired, which was called Autonomy. Now, the issue here is that Deloitte, the company, was going through the books of Autonomy and found no problems. But now HP saying there are, you're investigating Deloitte. Again, the issue of how these things can slip through, and again, how that feeds into public perception of these sorts of things.
Well, I think, again, it's easy to write a headline and sort of make very bold statements. I'm not familiar with the facts of the case, and therefore I don't know what the accounting treatment was or wasn't. Part of the issue we have, unfortunately, in the world at the moment is we don't have a consistent set of global accounting standards. And while we have this cross-Atlantic divide between the US and Europe, we're going to have these inconsistencies and different interpretations, different approaches that are rising. That's why the big four accounting firms have been arguing strongly to move to one global set of standards.
Michael Andrew, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're off to the movies now, or at least a film festival here in Doha. You may have heard of the Tribeca Film Festival in New York. If not, it was something set up by the celebrated actor Robert De Niro post 9/11 to get the city's cultural scene going again. Well, we've got our own edition here in Qatar, the Doha Tribeca Film Festival, the DTFF as it's known locally, which started 4 years ago, as you can see amid some great fanfare at the Museum of Islamic Arts. As with such events, it's evolved. It's now found a new home at Doha's Cultural Village and at the souk, or the local market. And it's grown as well, now screening 87 films this year, the biggest drawcard of which was arguably this one, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, a film about a Pakistani man in New York at the time of the 9/11 attacks, and the way his life is transformed because of that. Now, apart from its obviously strong storyline, the film was funded by the Doha Film Institute, which runs the festival each year. The thing is, it's all well and good having a major event with a marquee name behind it, but there's got to be something more to it, something long-term, a real reason. And there is, at least according to the CEO of the Doha Film Institute, Abdulaziz bin Khalid Al Khater.
The festival provides us a platform in order to showcase our film, which goes back to our original goal, which is to promote and to develop a sustainable film industry in Qatar, the Gulf, and the wider Middle East and North Africa region. To that end, we try to make DTFF the platform on which filmmakers can showcase their films, but as well as actually giving them the opportunity to build the connections that they need in order to realize their visions.
And audience-wise, you've got more than a festival here, you've got a brand, you've got Tribeca, which is a very, very big name in the world of film festivals. Robert De Niro created it. So to that end, who do you try to attract to a Tribeca Film Festival? Is it for Doha, is it for the Gulf, or who do you want coming?
I like to sum it up this way. I like to say that we're bringing the Middle East to the world, and we're bringing the world to the Middle East.
Perfectly summed up then. Let's talk about the Institute itself, and again the same sort of thing. What is the goal? What is the end game here? Are you saying that in X amount of years' time you want to have a full film studio here? It's all well and good wanting to foster local films, but there's got to be a final end goal, surely.
Well, I think the end goal is to see a thriving film industry in Qatar and the wider region. We want there to be the opportunity and the resources and the skills available for filmmakers to realize their visions. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands actually of stories that want to be told. Young filmmakers just they're absolutely dying to be heard, dying for an opportunity to get engaged and to write scripts and to do all these things. And just from the people that I've spoken to in the past 4 days, there are so many people that just, they have been waiting for this opportunity, and this is what we hope to do with the Film Institute.
And then what about the people who actually put this together and make it happen? You can have, I don't know if it's a problem, but you can have a classic case in a place like the Gulf of expat labour coming in, setting something up, and then eventually, I guess, passing it on to the local population? Or do you want to build this up as a local endeavour first, get local people involved? Is the enthusiasm from the local people involved to actually do this?
No, I don't. As with everything else, the film industry, the Film Institute, as with any other organization in Qatar, as you rightly said, we depend on the assistance of expats as a function of the, as a function of the, number one, the size of our population, and also the existing skill set that is in Qatar. The fact that we use, the fact that expatriates join us in this journey means that we can learn from each other. It promotes the whole concept of cultural dialogue as well. So I don't see it as an exclusive.
Because I guess in the end, it would be important for you to actually make this a Qatari film festival. It's all well and good having the Tribeca name, but I guess you want to show that this actually can be done here, not just imported, if I can say that.
Yeah, I think the Tribeca partnership is a very valuable one, and it's an important cultural partnership, and it goes to, again, the building of cultural bridges, even though that's probably a very, very overused term. However, I can assure you that it is very much a Qatari festival. It is organized by the Doha Film Institute. It's organized by an extremely passionate and talented group of people.
I have to ask about money, because I think there is a perception in this part of the world that there's just a lot of money around for events like this, that money can be thrown at something like a film festival and it can be done just like that. What is your business plan, if I can put it this way? Do you turn a profit? Do you need to turn a profit? What is your business model?
Yeah, the DTFF is not a for-profit enterprise. Neither is the Doha Film Institute, for that matter. We are an organization for public good. Our aim, first and foremost, is to promote local talent and, like I said, to create a film industry. When it comes to money, I think, again, unfortunately, there's a lot of perception, and I think in the case of DTFF, it's really unfounded. A lot of festivals, I'll give you an example. A lot of festivals, they would pay appearance fees for stars to come show up at the festival. This is not something that we do with DTFF. If we have a star appearance, it needs to make sense for what we're doing. It needs to make sense for the star. It needs to make sense in terms of promoting a film. We're not going to, go out of our way and pay exorbitant amount of money for glitz and glamour. That is not the point of DTFF. The point of DTFF is to have a homegrown festival, to have a Qatari festival that is first and foremost about film, and first and foremost about talent, and about the immense energy that we can see all around us now in the Arab world of people just yearning to tell their stories.
So if not on a monetary level, then how will you judge success? How will you sit here at the end of this festival or any other festival of any other year and say, yeah, this was a success, we did well?
For me, it's about the films. For me, going into, for example, our Made in Qatar screenings and looking at the audience and looking at the reaction of the audience to the Made in Qatar films, to the films in the Arab film competition. When we get like we got for our showing in Made in Qatar, a standing ovation at the end of the day, that to me is success of the festival.
Okay, then let's look to the future. Let's say add 10 years on, 2022, World Cup time here actually as it happens, but what do you think the film scene will be looking like here? Do you think that you would be able to turn Doha or parts of the Gulf into, not necessarily a filmmaking hub, not talking Hollywood or Bollywood here, but a place where people want to come to make films, where the infrastructure's in place and where the reputation is there for people to come and make big international feature films?
I think so. I think where, again, it's about perceptions, and it's about the way people sort of expect and think about things and take analogies. I mean, you use the analogy of Hollywood and Bollywood, and I would argue that Hollywood and Bollywood are actually very different, and India managed to create a very, very homegrown film industry and a unique industry model for themselves. And just as India did with Bollywood very successfully, that is, we hope to do a similar thing here in Doha, not along similar lines per se, but whatever the film industry looks like in 10 years in Qatar, I think it will and should be a unique model that is fitting to the region, that is uniquely Qatari and uniquely Arab.
Just don't call it Dollywood, whatever you do, please.
No, that one, I don't think that sounds nice.
Mr. Abdulaziz, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that is where we're going to leave you for this week. But if you want to get in touch, here's how to do it. Twitter's the easiest way. @KamalAJE is my name on Twitter. We've also got @AbidOliverAli, that's our business editor here at Al Jazeera. And our email address is there, countingthecost@aljazeera.net. Also, aljazeera.com/business. You can link on to the Counting the Cost page from there. And we put all our episodes up in full for you to catch up on whenever you would like. But that is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.